Okay, so good morning again. And as part of today's lecture, what we'll be doing is some few more topics, which are like almost the end topics of SQL, which relates to like the concepts which are provided by SQL. Now, in the last lecture, what we did was joins, where we learned like five type of joins, and using these joins, what we understood is we can answer any kind of question if someone asks to retrieve data from multiple tables at a single time. And in order to solve that, we can utilize one of the joins which have been provided. So in inner join, what it was basically joining both the tables on a common column, and we will get the results based on the match versus no match. And now what was that match versus no match was? Basically, match versus no match was on the join condition which we used like this. And it was basically on the ID column for our examples. And what we observed is only if the condition satisfies, the result will be shown. But if you move forward to the left join, what it says is irrespective of the match or no match, our output is always going to show the data from the left hand side table, which is table 1. And on the right hand side table, if there is a match, then the corresponding record will be shown for right hand side table. And if there is a no match, then we'll get to see a record which is having a value called as null, which means it is empty, like not present. And the importance of null is just to showcase or provide the end user knowledge, like null means there is no data present at that location in that table. And same way, if we move out to right hand side join, it was the other way of left hand side join, where we say is we will perform the join operation, but my output will have all the rows from table 2. And on the left hand side table, we will have only the records which are matched based on the given condition. And if there is a no match, we will have null record. So if you look at these left and right hand side join, they are like mirror images of each other. Then moving forward to self join. Self join was basically to utilize inner join itself, but it was more of joining on the same table. And what we discussed was more like self join and inner join are similar. The only difference is in self join, we can use only a single table on the left side of the join as well as right side of the join. Whereas inner join can work on any two type of tables. And then we move forward to, okay, so we were, even before moving here, the importance of self-join was if you want to answer any questions which relates to this specific table, whatever we mentioned in our query, then we can get that answer using self-join. And lastly, it was full outer join. So full outer join was basically combination of left join plus right join. So if we perform these both left join as well as right join, so data which comes from left join, the output which we might see, as well as output of right hand side join, if we join them together, that is a corresponding output for full outer join. So if someone needs like data of two table based on left as well as right hand side data, left join as well as right join, then that person can directly use full outer join condition rather than using two queries, one for left join and one for right join. And that completes the last section. So today what we'll do is we will try to understand uh, two important things which are provided in SQL other than joins. So until now, we have completed all the joins. Now the next topic is called as group by. So this group by is a specific keyword as like a select keyword or where keyword, which we were using in our previous queries. So similar to that, there is a query keyword called as group by, which is provided by SQL. Now the definition of this is it groups the rows that have same values. And whenever we utilize group by, we use aggregate functions. Aggregate functions. Now I'll let you know what are these aggregate functions, but for now just consider this single line as a definition that group by basically it groups rows from your output table or like from your source table which are similar in nature. And if we take an example of it, then we'll understand like what does that exactly group by means. So let's take an example. Now example here can be we have a table called a student like this, and if we run this query select star from student, it is providing us like there are 4 students present. Now if you look carefully at row number 3 and 4, you will see the name is same. Now this situation is possible in a real world because there can be 2 students whose name is same and they are present in the same class. But the only difference there might be in a roll number or some kind of ID. So for our example, what we're doing is IDs are unique for every student, but their names can be same or different. So this data set, whatever we are seeing is a valid one and it is possible in real world. Now, if you have this data set like a class which contains 4 students, now we need to find total number of students in class. So how can you find total number of students in class? So looking at this table's output, we can manually select, okay, there are 4 IDs, so output is 4. So 4 students are present in the class. But what if the student table has more than like thousands of rows? So in that case, we don't want to go and manually like count each and every row and corresponding student. That will be like a time consuming task and it involves some kind of error also. So we can get a wrong answer also if we manually read. So in order to solve these kind of questions, like if the data is containing thousands of rows and we want to find some kind of counts, we can utilize group by keyword. Now group by keyword will help us answer this question. So in order to find total number of students in the class, what we can do is we can write select star from student, we'll get the output, and later on what we'll do is we'll apply the group by keyword. Group by keyword, and then here what we'll do is I will just do ID, which is the common or like the unique key. And since I'm taking the corresponding group by column, ID column in this group by condition, I will copy this ID and instead of star, I will print here ID. Now there is a importance there. I will tell you afterwards, but if I just put a star here and apply this group by condition, we will get an error or the data might also not retrieve, which is showcasing here, but it is not giving us the correct answer. So ID, if we provide the same which we copied, and if we run it, we will see there are like 4 IDs. So this way we are getting now a list of all the unique IDs which are present in the student table. And now this again is going to not solve our problem because if there are thousands of rows, we are not going to go through each and every number and count it. So what group by includes is, or an SQL include is, it gives us some specific functions which are inbuilt functions, and that helps to solve our problems using the group by. So one of the function is called as count of star. So count is the function basically provided by SQL, which does is nothing but counts the number of rows here. So we have like 4 rows, and star is nothing but just to indicate rows which are present in our data set. So now if we run it, you will see every ID has a one count. That means every ID is unique and it is giving us a one count. So this is just one example I'm showing. Now let me show you one example where we might have count equal to 2. So in this same table student, if I run this query, select star from student, we have this name equal to which is duplicate present. Now instead of that, what I'll do is instead of ID column, I will group by on the name column. Name, group by name, and I can provide this counter star will just hold on for now. But if you see there are like 4 rows. Now if I do a group by, I will see 3 rows. So now the reason of getting 3 rows is group by basically eliminates duplicates from our data set. Now here, how the duplicate is eliminated was since the name has this Rohan name containing like 2 rows present. So instead of showing 2 rows, what we'll be showing is only single row if we apply a group by to it. Now, in order to show how many students with name Ajay is present in the class as well as Rohan is present in the class, that corresponding count, we can get it in this group by applying the count function. Count and then star and close bracket. Now, if I run it, I will see for this corresponding name, we have only one student present. So if you see Ajay's count is 1, but Rohan's count is 2 because in our student table, we have 2 records. That means 2 students are there whose name is Rohan. So that way we get for every name, what are the corresponding number of count of students. Now, this is just one of the example. It doesn't solve like what the question is, but this can act like a new question to answer any problem. So the problem of this question would be like provide the names of student and the corresponding count. So looking at this, we can say like 2 count means 2 Rohans are present in the class. 1 means like that is only a single individual and doesn't matters much. Now to solve this, find total number of students in class. What we can do is select star from count or star from student, group by ID, and here also we will have ID, but instead of this ID, we can have is count of ID. If we run this, it is giving us 1 rows. But if we remove this group by, it is giving 4. Okay, so the question which we took here, it is not applicable to the group by. That's what we are looking here. So like if we remove the group by clause, even though that group by clause is removed, we are still getting the count of 4, which is expected by this example. So I think this example question which we took is not applicable to this group by. But what we can do is let's take another example, and here we'll solve this question like find student names and their corresponding counts. So for this example, the for this question, the example which we did here is the most suitable one because it solves the answer using group by. Now this is just one of the example. but we'll take a few more examples so that you understand the group by logic. So using this one, we can get output like every student and its corresponding count. Now we'll move to the second example. Now second example can be group by the first one which we did, or let's take example, find unique names in student table. So find unique names in student table means what basically? So if I remove all these things and if I just write a select star from student, here you will see there are like 4 students and the unique names are basically 3 because one of the name is duplicate. So how can I find all the unique names in the class? So in order to answer this, we can utilize group by, and then since we want to find unique names, we'll provide the name column. And same here for star, we'll provide name so that once we run it, you'll see instead of 4 names, we'll see only 3 unique names. So this is what Ajay, Rohan, and Samit. These are the 3 unique names present in the student table. So that way, if you look at both the examples, what would be the syntax for this group by? So syntax for this group by is select column name from table and afterwards we write is group by column name. Now this is one of the when using this syntax we solve this question. But in addition to these column names, we can have one more optional aggregate function. Now this aggregate function will look after this group by thing. What are the aggregate functions? And then we can come back again to solve all the questions using aggregate functions. So aggregate function. So this aggregate function which I'm talking about is this count of star is one of the aggregate function. Aggregate function. Okay, so we'll just exclude that example for now. So this completes group by clause. Like why group by clause is used is what we understood is 2 things. First thing is in order to eliminate any duplicate values from my source table, I can use group by. And the example is this one. Like here I've eliminated one duplicate name. And the other one is if I want to get some counts from a given table, I can use group by. Now the count can be specific to the given column which I want. So first example was I got a count for every name and using this count, we got to know that every student names and its corresponding count is provided in the query and unique name is the first example. Now if you move forward, there is one more important thing which is added to the group by is called as having. So similar to group by, we have another keyword provided by SQL which is called as having, and this having clause or have this keyword is always or not always, it's only used with group by keyword. So what does this mean is whenever we want to use this having keyword, it can be only used when our query has group by contained in it. But if you just purely write having here, it will throw us error because having cannot be utilized on your query if there is no group by. So let's take an example. What does this having exactly means? So just to give a high level, what is having is, it is nothing but a keyword which can be used with group by to provide some kind of conditions which we want. Now, if you look previously, the conditions were provided in the where clause, like select star from student where, and after where we used to provide our conditions. But the other way of providing condition, if we are utilizing a group by, is having clause. So after group by, it was a name column. And if we want to apply any condition, we can use having clause here. And after having, I can write my condition here so that my output would be based on this condition also. So example is, let's take an example. Find student whose count is 2 in class. Find student names whose count is 2 in class. So basically what I'm asking is, if I do this select star from student, run it, I want to find the students from this class whose count is 2. That means the names are same, but the count is 2. That means I want to just get this data, row number 3 and 4 name, which is row 1. So that should be my output because its count is 2. But for Ajay and Samir, the count is 1. So previously what we wrote was this query, select name from student, group by name, and here we added was count of star. And if I run this, you will see every student and its count. So since Rohan was present twice, what we are asking in the question is, I need to find this record as an output. So in order to just get this output, what we'll write in our having clause is having count of star. So why am I using count of star is because this count of star is giving me the value. And since I'm using this column, I'm providing the column here as it is, count of star equal to 2. So this becomes my condition. And in this condition now, since I give count equal to 2, I will just retrieve only this single row instead of 3 rows. If I run it, I'm getting only single row. So this way, we are getting a student whose name has occurred twice, or like there are two students with same name as Rohan. So that's why we're getting 2 count. Now this count is optional thing. We can remove it from here and then also it will work. But if we just want to see the exact count, then we can put it back there and run it so that we see the exact count. So here we learned is only one additional thing, that whenever we want to use this having keyword is only used with group by. So whenever we want to use this having, we have to utilize group by keyword first and the output should come. Then having card keyword is used to provide the condition, and in this condition we are going to filter out the rows which we want. That is the only task which having keyword does. So most of the time whenever we write group by, we have to write having clause so that our output is getting in certain format which we need. So this becomes our query, and syntax would be the same one which I can copy from here. And in this syntax, I'll just add is after group by having, and after having it would be condition. So this way we can utilize the having keyword. Now you might get a question like, what is difference between having and where clause, right? Because this having is also used to provide a condition, and where clause which was the select star from student, where let's add equal to 2. So here also in where condition I'm giving a in where keyword I'm giving a condition, and here in having keyword I'm giving a condition. So both places I'm giving the condition. So what is difference between this where keyword and having keyword? Only one difference is having keyword is applied to the query only if we have utilized group by. But here where keyword can be used anytime, like it's irrespective. Even though if you use group by or not, we can apply the where keyword. It doesn't need like group by. So it is independent of any keyword, whereas having is dependent on group by keyword. That is the only one difference. So that completes having clause. So until now, we have completed all the keywords which are provided by SQL. And now using all these keywords which we learned, as well as joins and these create and drop statements, all these things, we can perform all the operations required to retrieve data, modify data, anything using SQL. Now, only thing remaining is these aggregate functions, the one which I talked about while using this group by. So that is like another important topic in SQL, which is called as aggregate functions. So these are also pretty much easy, aggregate functions in SQL. So basically, what are aggregate functions in SQL? So aggregate functions are nothing but like inbuilt functions provided by SQL. And if you apply those functions, we are going to get some kind of values. So basically there are five type of functions provided by SQL. One of them is called as count, which we utilized in the first group by query. Then the next one is called as sum, which as the name indicates is used to add some value and give you the output. Then the next one is called as average, which is again a mathematical formula to get an average from a list of numbers. Then we have is something called as min, which is to find minimum value. And the last one is called as max, which is required to find out the max value. So these are the five keywords using which we can perform some aggregations over our data. Now, when can we use these functions? So these functions can be used in our group by conditions, in the having condition, or in the select query of the group by. So there are two places here as well as here we can use it, and it's upon us like where we want to use this. We can use it at both places at a single time or at a single place. That is also fine. Also, irrespective of group by, we can use it purely these functions on a select query. So for example, now if I do select star from student, if I run this, now here we see is 4 rows. Now the first example which we took, like we want to find number of students in the class. How can I find out is instead of star, I can put count of star, which is going to give me like 4 rows, because what this count is going to do is it is going to count each and every row, which is output of the student table. Now if I run this, you will see 4. So this way, using this query, we can tell how many students are present in the class. Then comes this sum. Now sum, again, if you go back and if you run it, now let's say you want to add all the IDs. That means 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So whatever the sum is going to be, I need to get that sum. How do I do that? So same way to the count of star, we need to do is sum of star. Now we cannot apply star here for sum. We need to provide is specific column, so that once we provide specific column, then only we'll get the output. Because if we run it as it is, you will see error is getting, because we cannot do sum of star. Sum can be applied only on a given column. So since we wanted to add ID column, we'll provide ID here. And if I run this now, we'll see sum equal to 10, because all the IDs from 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. So that is the reason the sum is giving us the proper value. So this is how we can use the sum function. Now similar to sum, now we can have is average function, which is the last one, third one. Now here again, we cannot write average of star. We again have to write similar to sum. We have to provide the ID column, because ID contains the numbers in it. If I run it, you'll see average of this 1, 2, 3, and 4 is 2.5, and that's how we get the average of a certain column. Then comes is min and max. Min and max is also going to be similar. Now, what is this min? Min is nothing but to get a minimum value from a given column. Now, if I replace this average with min, I will get the minimum value. So what is the minimum value? Out of these four values, minimum value is 1. So if I run it, I'll get 1, which is minimum value. And same way, max is going to give me the maximum value. And in order to get the max, we can write as max and run it. So max is 4, because 1, 2, 3, 4 are the IDs. So 4 is the maximum ID from my output. So these four functions are basically used to get some numbers from our table rather than getting the data. Because if you see these numbers, whatever we got are basically some quantitative numbers and not the data from the table. And using these functions with group by can help us get certain numbers for a certain column. And the way we used here was for name condition, like we wanted to find names whose count is equal to 2, and that's where we got a single student who has count equal to 2, and we utilize the aggregate function for that. So what we learned with this aggregate functions is, using aggregate function we can get the numbers like some quantities from our table, and the next one is we can utilize this functions as it is in a select query, or we can add these functions or utilize these functions in group by query. These are the only two things which we need to know of for these aggregate functions. So after moving from aggregate functions, the next topic is again a easy one which we have learned in Python also, which is called as modulo operator. So what is basically a modulo operator in SQL? Now, since we know like in Python also we utilize this modulo operator, it goes by this symbol called as percentile, and same way it is used here also in SQL. And what we learned there was like, let's say we do 6 modulo 5. That means what it is doing is it is doing division of 6 divided by 5, and the output of this is going to be the remainder. So remainder is going to be 1, because 5 ones are 5, and 6 minus 5 becomes 1. So output is 1. So how do we utilize this modulo operator in SQL? So to utilize modulo operator, we can only utilize this modulo operator in the where condition. So the way we can use it, select star from student, and if I run this, now I see 4 rows. Let's say I want to find all the IDs which are odd in number. That means 1 and 3 should be part of my output. So how can I do that? So usually I will do is where ID mod 2 equal to 1. Here we cannot use double equal to, it is just single equal to. And what it is going to do is it is going to take ID of every row. So 1 mod 2, and it is going to give us output as 1. Then 2 mod 2 is 0. So 2 will be skipped. Then comes 3. So 3 mod 2 becomes 1. So if this condition satisfies, then only that row would be displayed. So if I run this, you'll see 1 and 3 are shown as part of my output because this condition is used to give me all odd IDs. But what if I want to get even IDs? So in that case, I will comment this check and then I'll write ID mod 2 equal to 0. And if I run this, I will see 2 and 4, which are odd IDs. So that way, these modulo operators works, which we know clearly from our Python as well as any other mathematical operator. This is used to perform modulo operation on a given column. And syntax for this is any column modulo any number which we want. An example was these examples. So let's take this will give me all even IDs. Now the next thing within SQL is something called as strings. Now we know strings in Python. Similar to that, we have strings in SQL also. Now, how can we provide any string in SQL? So basically, any string in SQL is similar to Python. Like we need like single quote, and inside that single quote, we need a string or any kind of text we want to write. And in order to display this, I will write just select my string. And if I run this, you will see the corresponding input string which we gave is part of my output. So that way, the declaration of string is in single quotes, write the string what you want, and then just write select star from or just select string. This is one way of writing a string in SQL, where we are providing the string as part of my input. But what if here, if you see in my student table, I have string already present in the name column, right? Now, if you want to do string match, what we can do is we can write a where condition. And let's say we want to find a student whose name equal to Ajay. So how can we do that? Name equal to, again, here we'll provide the string purely within a single quotes, which will match with the column name. And that's how we can provide a string in the condition, which we know of. But just to complete this topic, we'll write the query here so that we know like string can be utilized in SQL at various places. And the new thing which we know of is how to provide a string in SQL. And the second query we know of because we utilize this query in our previous queries. And the last one, or like one of the important one, is called as null. Now this null also we saw in our tables when we performed left join. Now that left join was going to give us some rows which are not present. So what does this null exactly means? So by definition, it means empty value, and if it's empty value, that means this row or this value does not exist in table. And whenever this value does not exist or the corresponding value does not exist, instead of showing the actual value, it is going to replace that actual value with a null keyword so that everyone can understand, like, if there are any absent data, we can write it as null, because if we don't show that data here, we will not know like what is absent data. And in order to determine what is absent data, we utilize this null keyword. And null keyword basically displays what are the values which are absent and not present in the tables. So that is one of the, what I would say is a nomenclature to name any kind of value which is not present in any of the table. And this example was when we utilize our left join as well as right join, or this full outer join, where we saw null values present in either side of the data, and that indicates that value is not present. So this completes all the keywords as well as some major all the important concepts provided by SQL. Now only thing remaining is keys in SQL. Now for keys in SQL, there are only two important keys for us to know. Now firstly, I'll just go back to the query again. Select star from student. Now if you see the data again here, now looking at the data, these keys, what does it means is it doesn't indicates any kind of data which we're looking right now, like these number of 4 rows which we are seeing. It doesn't indicate keys work with that. The keys here basically identify is the structure of the table. Now if you see student table structure, there are two columns. Column number one is called as ID and column number two is called as name. So these are the two columns provided by SQL. And if you look at the structure internally, how the structure is, it has ID column and name column. Now, why keys are used is to determine relationship between two tables. Now, how can we determine relationship? That will go into one example so that you'll understand that. But before going into relationship, the first type of key which is provided by SQL is called as primary key. So one type of key is called as primary key. Now, what does this exactly mean, primary key? The definition of this is it is unique identifier of every row in table. Now, if you understand this definition, unique identifier of every row in table. So looking at this data, what can be the unique identifier of every row? So if you look at this first row, what can be the unique row data which we can consider as a primary key is this ID, because these numbers are always going to be unique for every row. But if you see at the name, you might have some names which are not unique across rows, right? Because row number 3 and 4 has same name. So we cannot say like this name column can act like a primary key. So that's why what we can say is ID column can act like a unique column for every row. And since this ID value is going to give us a unique identifier of every row, we can say primary key of this table can be ID. So that is what a primary key is called. That means primary key of this table, if someone asks me what is a primary key of student table, the primary key of student table is ID column because the values which are provided in ID column are unique and there are no duplicates and every row can be identified using this unique value. But we cannot use name column as primary key because two or more of the rows has same values. So if you see these row number 3 and 4 has same value in name column, that's why we cannot say it as a unique identifier. And that's the reason we call it as a primary key for ID column. Now, even though if we say it, we have to provide this primary key convention when creating the table. So if you see the create table structure of the student, right? So when we created our table, what we did was we gave two IDs, ID, then we gave integer, and then name as varchar, which was a string. So this was the structure for student table. Now, even though by looking at this, we say like it's a primary key, but we have to define it somewhere before creating the table. Like during the table creation, we have to specify there like what can be our primary key. Now, since we know like ID has to be primary key, after this integer, we write primary key. This way, when the structure of table student is created, SQL knows like ID column is the primary key. And that's the reason using this ID key, we can know like these are the unique rows or unique data present in this column only, and it doesn't contains any duplicates. Now, what is the use of this? Use of this is just to identify uniqueness of every row. Other than that, there is no additional uh, use of this primary key. But it is like a good to know to understand the structure. The second type of key, the last one which we know of, is called as foreign key. Now, what is this foreign key? Now here, foreign key is used to establish relationship between two tables. So how can we establish relationship between two tables? Now in our last lecture, what we saw is there was a table called as student and there was one more table called as address. So let's create an address table. And in that address table, we had like two columns. One was ID, which was integer, and the last one was called as city. Okay, city. So here in address table, again the primary key is going to be ID as per our like last understanding. And how can I create a relationship between these two tables? Now, in order to create relationship between these two tables, there is a common column, which is the ID, because ID column is present in both of the tables. So in order to create this relationship between these two tables, I can utilize foreign key. And now foreign key would be ID for my address table. So since I want to determine a foreign relationship between these two tables, instead of writing primary key, I will write foreign key so that we know like ID column is present in other table and the relationship between these two tables is ID columns are same in both the tables, and that's why we are writing it as a foreign key. And that is the only use of a foreign key, just to determine these two tables are related to each other. And information in my student table is present in address table also, like the example which we did yesterday. Like information, half information is present in student table and half information is present in address table. So these two tables will help me provide a relationship using foreign key, and that's how we can create primary key and foreign key relationship between these two tables. But if we just remove this foreign key and write primary key as we wrote previously here, this will also create two tables, but we cannot determine or we cannot say like there is a relationship between these two tables because we have wrote primary key. That means there are like ID columns present in both tables, but these ID columns are basically primary keys. But if I want to establish a relationship between these two tables, I need to mark either this column or this column as foreign key. So either this column can be foreign key or this column. So if one of the key is foreign key, then the other one has to be primary key, like that. So that we know like these two tables are related and the relationship is ID column is common between these two tables. Now these two things, what we learn are more for like understanding the structure, like defining the structure of a table and its column. And one of that was primary key to uniquely determine every row, and foreign key is to uniquely establish a relationship between two tables. That is the only use of these two keys. Now SQL provides more than these two keys, but they are like more complex ones which are not required right now because they're not being used vastly. Only the vastly used keys are like foreign key and primary key. So are there any questions until now? So I assume like there are no questions from both of you. So just to conclude the lecture here, so this way we completed all the concepts of SQL and all the examples which are related to all the concepts. And if there are no questions right now for you, what we can do is we can keep a additional lecture tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow to see like if you have any doubts with respect to SQL as well as Python. So you can collaborate with ma'am and let her know like what are the questions or like what type of questions you have before, and we can discuss it tomorrow or day after tomorrow whenever you have time, so that we can complete out both the sections like Python as well as SQL to see like if any doubts are there. If there are no doubts, then this would be like I would say like almost like last lecture of SQL because all the concepts are clear and programs related to every concept are done in the examples itself when we did each and every concept. So just I want to understand like do you have any doubts or so for your next lecture, or do you plan to like study first and then or
So
want
we
to?
will study first and then doubt if we
Okay,
have. So can
So,
you just share that complete note?
yeah, sure. I'll share this
Okay.
notes as well as I have one more additional note. Let me find that, and if I get that, then I'll share that second note, or I'll just share this one because it's missing the first lecture which we did. This notes because I'm not able to find, but I'll share the second note which has the first part. So I'll consolidate and send it to you. Uh, what I'll do is I'll send it to the ma'am. She'll forward it to you today.
Yes, okay,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So, all right. So that completes our today's session, and see you in the doubt session uh, after you study all the material.
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir.